All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about scaling teams. So whilst this is called Build Your NSO Community, Build Your Own NSO Community, it's really more about how do you scale your NSO team. And really it's how do you do that sustainably? Because there are some ways that aren't going to work. So you've got NSO, you've built a service, you've been successful, you've got some stakeholders in the business that are super happy. You need to grow your team, right? But now you maybe have the problem that you've still got a roadmap and you've got a lot of things in that initial service you want to do, and you need to stand up a new team. So how do you do that? And if you've got a couple of teams already, maybe a lot of people here from global companies, right? You have operations in multiple countries. So how do you develop a practice across multiple regions? How do you go past a couple of co-located teams to something that's a bit bigger? And I think one of the key things we've seen is how do you do this without kind of burning out your key engineers, right? The last thing you want to do is to take your NSO guru and have them work on 16 different projects. That's not sustainable. It might work in the short term, but you're just going to end up with one very burned out NSO engineer. So I'm going to talk briefly about growing your team, a little bit about that. Scaling past one team, and then mostly focus on building a community. And I'm seeing as Jan is right here, I'm going to probably get him to say a few things too. So growing a team, right? There's some simple things that we can do that you're probably doing already, but I'm just going to go through them anyway. It's quite good to define your team role expectations. Typically an NSO developer is either going to be someone with some software skills, maybe a network engineer who has the software skills. Maybe you hire in a developer who has some expertise in the networking space. But once you need to grow that team, you will already start to get a little bit more specialization. People who are really good with Yang and understand service modeling. People who can go have that low-level conversation with the network engineer about what are the variations and how do they fit. The network engineer who's coming and helping with your project. So it helps to start defining what are the roles. And just when it's one team, that's just guidelines. It's not this is how the team must be structured. These are the skills. But just so people start to feel a little bit more comfortable, I've joined this team. How do I contribute? How do I make this team successful? Oh, okay, well, you're a network engineer. This is the sort of thing you can help us with. Source control, I think that's probably a given for most people, but you'd be surprised. And obviously documenting and documenting your design and code. I'm going to intro another presentation later, and I'm going to go a little bit into this, but it's an easy trap to fall into that you just say, well, look, the config is there, the templates are there, the code is well written, it documents itself. But 6 months, 12 months, you come back and you look at your code, and it's not quite as well written and self-documenting as you thought it was, right? So document your code and document your design. Now, realistically, if you have experienced people in your team, they'll be doing this already, right? You have someone who's done a few software projects, they'll be pushing for these things already, but they need support. So if you're managing a team, if you're leading a team of people, if you're in that team and you're contributing, you do need to support those efforts. If you don't do that documentation, if you don't have these roles defined, nothing bad's going to happen, but you're going to hit scaling or sustainability issues at some point. So how do you scale past that one team? You've been successful. You've been asked can you take on a new domain in the company, right? Another part of the network. So really, that we need a little bit more structure now. And documenting is kind of key. No one likes to do it, but document and document a bit more. And really, it's at this point, it's nice for you to develop your own guidelines. What is the style? How do you work in your company? Yang conventions. How are you going to structure Yang? Do you like includes or not? Are you going to have a shared package that you put common types into and everyone must import that package? Is that common package going to define the base structure for all of the services in your network? Or is everyone going to be allowed to do their own thing and kind of augment the Yang tree wherever they want to? Have some standards for package documentation. There are multiple users of a package. Right? There's like the networking team might want to understand better what the package does. There is the consumer of the package from the northbound system, and they want to understand, how do I use this package? What are the special things in the Yang? What are the important things that I need to know? And then there's the package developer. He wants to understand the design. He wants to understand why did you choose to have 16 templates instead of one template? Right? What are the key logic decisions that were made? So come up with some guidelines about how to document your package. I strongly recommend you put the documentation in the package. Don't create a separate design document in Word or a wiki. Put it in source control. Put the documentation in there as Markdown or read the docs, whatever format you want to do, but put it in the package. Code conventions and things. But the other one is create opportunities for sharing. So often you're busy, you're head down, you've got a deadline, you've got features that need to be there, you've got testing to do, you've got maybe a network team that are being difficult because, hey, they've got their own jobs to do and they don't want to reconfigure the test environment for you again because, hey, they've got a Sev2 issue and drop everything and fix the Sev2. But you actually have to take that time and create the opportunities for the teams to start sharing, best practices, lessons learned. It's, the reason why everyone is here this week, so we can all exchange within the wider community. But I mean, I put my hand up in the previous presentation and said, you know what, I've done this wrong before, but I'm not going to stand here and tell you all the mistakes that we've made in our projects, right? But internally, I'm much more likely to do that. So create those opportunities, and maybe also consider an in-house training and enablement plan. So in advanced services, in APJC, so we put together a plan about 2.5 years ago. How do we, where do we see the need of the skills? And we quickly identified that there was a gap in that kind of technical lead role. So we crafted kind of a training and enablement plan for NSO lead developers. And that's worked out quite well. And then the other thing here, though, is that change, right? A change in focus for the NSO lead. You don't want that NSO lead to be working on the code in every single project that's going on. Right? Your best NSO resources, the senior ones, should be focused now on building other leads, building other capabilities within the team. And yeah, it's at this point that it says, at this point, it becomes harder to scale past 1 or 2 subject matter experts. Right? This is where you possibly need a little bit more than just some teams meeting up for coffee and discussing their problems, how they've solved things, how they approach things. So this is the main part of the presentation. So building a community. So my journey in this space started about 18 months ago. And I just mentioned, we put together a training plan to develop more leads in advanced services. and I co-organized and co-delivered a training course. We had about 20 people come, like accelerated NSO leader course, and Jan came and helped run that course with us. And after the course, I was like, Jan, what can we do? How can we get better at this stuff? And Jan's feedback was, you have some pretty good SMEs, but you guys need to build your pyramid. Like, okay, I mean, I understood what that meant, but I think my manager was scratching her head for a little bit. So we're talking about a pyramid of expertise, right? At the bottom, we've got people that are, why is that not showing up? Maybe once I built the slide? No. Okay, I'll just explain. I don't know what's going on. It's showing up on the preview, but not on the...
So switch to the...
Yeah. No.
Nope. I show it like this instead.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the bottom, you've got your generally, NSO trained developers, people who've been on the courses from nil. Maybe you've got an in-house training plan, Cisco training, and this is the general population of people working on NSO. And then for us in advanced services, we kind of have regional technical leads, people who have either through coaching, experience, training, they're able to lead a small NSO project on their own up to, the largest projects that we do. And then we have kind of, this global NSO leads and experts within advanced services, people who have experience of multiple large projects, the people who've been doing this since acquisition, spent a lot of time working with people like Jan and getting their hands on with NSO. But that's kind of where our pyramid tops out in AS. But then for us, when we have challenges, that's when we reach out to the broader community. So for us, that's pretty much Jan and Jan's team of kind of, there's an outreach team in the BU who support our activities. And then their escalation point is to that really small core team of engineers who build NSO, the people writing the code, the people writing the documentation. So, from the top down, documentation, education, etc., and bottom up, feedback, queries, requests for expertise and examples, escalation for support. So this is the pyramid, right? Go. So Cisco, large corporation, right? So if we'd approached this kind of classically, I'd build a business case to put something together. We'd secure funding and commitments from some sponsors, and we'd formalize it. We'd have a nice clear hierarchy of well, you are in this box, you're in this one, congratulations, you've made it to the highest tier in AS. You're a very important person now. We'd create those processes, we'd enforce them. People would start having KPIs in their development plan. You must make this happen by this date, and we'll review your progress. But can we really formalize this yet? I mean, NSO, software-defined networking, net DevOps, is all really new, right? No, I don't think anyone can claim that they're an expert in this space. Within Cisco, who can dictate that escalation process? Who can say what it should look like? The experts today, are they going to be our experts tomorrow? Are they still going to be around? Are they going to move to a customer or a competitor? Invest time in advancing these people through the process, and and realistically, we have very rapidly evolving processes and practices. LSA didn't exist 2 years ago, it definitely didn't exist. 18 months ago, it was kind of an emerging thing. A year ago, people started actually trying it in production. Now, our practices in this space are emerging. The technology is moving quickly. So formal structures might suit an engineering practice, buildings and mechanical engineering and things, but I don't feel it really fits. So I'm a people before process kind of person. People will always be faster to adapt than processes, right? If we define a process, we'll train people on it, they'll start following it. But, if you find that doesn't work, then what do? Do you have to raise an exception to the process, right? Do I have to get someone to sign off on me not doing this? But it's not just as simple as that, right? You need to have the right mission. You need to have the right encouragement, support to make this work. And success. Someone who's very successful will often generate more success. The same as not, a good process generates more processes. That's not really a good approach. So I kind of looked based on this kind of what works well outside, and it's an area of interest for me anyway. But I did take a bit of a look around. Most open source communities are very self-organizing. They're self-supporting. No one's telling them how to do things. They often have some community contribution guidelines, light processes. It's set by a small core team, but they're not dictates. They're not, you must do things this way. It's like, if you want to be part of our community, if you want to be a valuable contributor, please follow these things, but you don't have to. Every open source project pretty much has or every successful one has an IRC channel on Freenode. And they build their community through events, talks, blogs, maybe books, knowledge bases, wikis, etc. So I kind of took that as my inspiration. So within advanced services, just over a year ago, taking some kind of standing on some work of some other people that had put a lot of effort into this, but maybe a little bit focused on their own team. I created a community within AS. So today we've got 700 people in this community within Cisco AS and TS, so technical support, TAC. And we got a couple of outsiders in there, outside of services. These are all people that are either trained in NSO, have a significant interest and have kind of demonstrated a desire to learn more about NSO, or they manage people and NSO projects. About 100 of them are active weekly on our WebEx team space or on Jive. That's easy to track. I can look at charts. I can look and see people online. It's about 100 to 120 every week active. So we have a team space. It's quite active. We've got multiple spaces, different topics in different spaces. We've got some blogs and wiki pages, documents and code. But realistically, that's all supported by about 35 regular contributors. Out of that 700, maybe 35 are the regular contributors who are, every couple of weeks they're asking questions, they're answering questions, they're supporting each other. And that we have about 15 really active people. So you look at those ratios, and I'd say for most of you in customer land, that's not great ratios. You really have to push for this, right? So Jan runs essentially the NSO Developer Hub. I don't know if you want to share your view on this sort of contribution rates and
I think it's about the same. I mean, it's 5% that are contributing regularly and 2% that are more active. I think it's about the same, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's not uncommon.
Yeah. and actually, Niklas, who organized this conference, invited me to a few calls with the experts who helped set up the NSO Developer Hub, and we talked a little bit about some of these things. But so the key thing is that momentum and driving engagement. So with a smaller team, it's possibly a little bit easier. But I just wanted to share, this. So this is something I learned from those guys. They said this upward spiral of engagement. So how do you generate more interest to get more people to come, to contribute more and involve more, to generate more interest? So it's an outward expanding spiral rather than steady state or a declining. So the way I do that, I use regular email updates. I try and send one out once a month, just updating people on what have we been talking about in TeamSpace. What have people documented in Jive? What's happening in the wider NSO community? Like go look on the Developer Hub. Jan's uploaded an interesting presentation. Look, there's really interesting Q&A with the guys from Telia or whichever customer, right? Go look at the wider communities, get involved. So I try that one about once a month, every 1 to 2 months. And I can look at the graph and I can see, I send an email out, engagement spikes and then it drops off, and I send another one, and that's it's quite good. Encourage and reward that active participation. And then we have forums, so we team calls, etc. We've promoted the use of the appropriate forums in those meetings. And again, after that meeting, you get a spike in engagement and people start talking. And actually, one of the good things, we've got managers now basically saying, look, when you start working on NSO, these are the people you go talk to. That's the community you join. You go ask your questions here. And that's been pretty good. And then, basically going back to one of my first points, you want this to be sustainable. You don't want your core team of NSO developers to get so stretched that they kind of give up. They burn out. You don't want that. So the nice thing about this is we have shared support. Someone has a question, they don't have to wait until someone pops up on a forum or whatever. It's real time. It's live. People are answering questions 24/7, and it takes the load off of the more senior people in AS and the company. So I think we've been fairly successful with this within AS. My director tells me he considers us one of the best examples of self-organizing kind of community within AS. The collaboration does go through cycles, especially holiday shutdowns and those things really affect engagement. It was distressing how much the December, January shutdown killed my engagement. The number of people coming halved, and I had build that up again in the new year. But they're coming back, and for us, really, the next steps is just continue doing what we're doing, but also we recognize we've been fairly successful in this, but now we want to contribute back a bit more. So push out to the wider community, share some of the things we've been doing and some of the documentation we've done. And so key takeaways just for this. So team scaling doesn't happen by itself. Create just enough structure and rules, but don't go overboard. Promote that culture of collaboration and mutual support. We found it. We thought it would happen, and we found it's pretty true. Your tech leads and your subject matter experts are they become your blocker to scaling your teams, and they'll happily take on too much work. can-do attitude in Cisco, but that's not a good thing. It's not sustainable for a long term. And this is a picture of me canyoning. So canyoning, you go out into the Australian bush, you take some ropes and you go find a canyon and you descend down it. We got lost. We misread the map. We were 15 meters away from where we wanted to be, and we thought this is the start of the canyon. We didn't realize just over the other side of the ridge was the start of the canyon. So off we go, but then we got stuck. We got pretty stuck. But the thing is, if you're stuck, ask for help. We got stuck. We stopped. We reassessed the situation, and helped each other out. That's what you do. So the Developer Hub is for all sorts of questions. It's not just for technical questions. If you want to know about scaling your team, responsibilities in the team, go ask those questions, because there's a lot of people now with experience of doing these things. Cool.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think this was excellent.
Thank you.
We do have time for 2 questions if you want. Anybody? Any reflections?
Why your own community as opposed to using the Developer Hub? Yeah, the question was why you create your own Cisco AS community as opposed to using the developer community to do that.
I knew I was going to get asked that question. I got asked that question by quite a few people. It comes down to trust, right? Building an environment where you can say, I'm stuck, I have this problem, I don't understand, right? You want to trust that the people there have your back. And whilst I'd say it's not true that within Cisco or the wider community that there is no trust, right? There is a lot of trust within that community, but it's the perception of trust. And so if you're an engineer and you're working on a customer project, you don't really, you're probably not going to be happy telling the world, I've got this problem, if the world includes your customer and they're watching the Developer Hub. And the same with our internal sales. So yeah, it happens, right? Junior people, even experienced people have problems, but not everyone understands software. Not everyone understands this is a process. We're still scaling the team, so just create an environment where the people there, you can trust them to have your back and not judge you for asking stupid questions.
Anyone?
All right.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.